Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and on this stream, we're starting a software as a service, a SaaS project from scratch. We're going to work through every line of code here on this software. You will see live on stream or in the future on a recording. So you'll be able to watch the entire project grow from its inception all the way to going out and actually, hopefully, serving customers in the future. So we started last week. I set up some basic stuff on the project, and we're ready to go this week. We're going to work on this first issue, which is to set up users and authentication and the very core stuff that we'll need for the application. At any time, you're free to ask me anything about Python, Django, or web development, and I will do my best to answer it. Also, I went ahead and bought a domain name. Obviously, the domain name is not going to go anywhere yet, but I want to give this project a name that people can reference when they're talking about something, and I'll probably put this in the thumbnails so that you'll know when this project starts, because I often get questions of, well, when did you start your last project in my homeschool app that I do? So I will start to try and differentiate between whether this stream is about one project or another. So the domain that I've bought for this email service that is a journaling service through email is this one right here that I'll drop in the chat, journeyinbox.com. So that's the name that I thought would be appropriate to represent some kind of journaling. I looked at a bunch of different names, and this is one that I found that was available that kind of captured what I'm trying to do. And if you weren't able to join the last stream, as a reminder, what this service is a daily journaling service that is intended to send you an email every day, and it will allow you to respond to that email, which will then show up and be collected as a digital journal for you. But the novel part about it, the cool part, is that every time you get one of these prompt emails sent to your inbox, it will include a previous entry. So if you have a long history of daily entries, you'll get a random entry presented to you that is a reminder of this is what you did at some point in the past. And so that's the kind of the hook. I'm actually copying or cloning a different service. We won't be using any of their code, of course, but I'm copying the concept. And the reason I'm doing that is because that service had some reliability issues. And so there's kind of a couple of factors. I wanted to make a new SaaS that everybody could see from scratch, and would like to have a service that I could be in control of its reliability, because I use that journaling service every day. I have thousands of entries in there over a course of many years. So it's time to transfer all of that over and get a service that I can call my own and show you a project. John, welcome to the stream this evening. Good to see you again. Looking forward to your questions and stuff, if you've got them. All right, so let's get down to it. What do we need to do? We kind of set up the very basics of the project. We saw the Django start page. I think I even still have the tab up here. So this is really the core of it. We got a bunch of pieces in place, but there's still a lot to be done. And what I would like to end this stream today having a sign-up flow that kind of represents how I want users to sign up in reality. We will probably not get it to any of the web page styling today. So if there's a login page and a sign-in page, we're not going to make that look nice and pretty. We'll probably save that for the future. But it's the data and like the actual ability to sign in that is what I'm hoping to capture here. And we need to integrate some tools to do that, because Django's default login sign-up ability, while great for many purposes, it does not quite fit the needs that I have. And namely, we want to be able to have a sign up by email, because this service is going to be totally centered around email. So I want to make sure that that is the flow. I already have experiences with my last app, my homeschool application, so we'll be kind of replicating what I've done there. Although trying not to steal too much, there's benefit to revisiting this and see if things have changed. But let's get down to it. Let's go to the code and make sure there's nothing up my sleeves here. There should never be anything that gets pulled here. At some point in the future, we'll have to manage dependencies, and I've been thinking about that too. If that's worth going over in the stream, we can have a discussion on that. Maybe it is. Maybe it's good to see the whole life cycle. So we'll consider it all. But we've got the journal project here, and let's get down to the settings that we're after. The first thing I think that we need to do before anything else is set up users. If we we run the local web server, if we do manage.py and do run server, you're going to see some messages come out that we haven't done migrations. Migrations are Django's way of saying we have things we want to apply to our database table. And if I listed these migrations, one of these things that you can see is this is the migrations that we need to migrate for, and it's this auth stuff here. The auth system has keeps track of users, and is how we keep track of sessions and know who is logged in and who is not logged in. And Django has a built-in user that you can use, but if you choose to use it, you kind of run out of the ability to customize that if you ever needed to. And while I don't recommend doing a lot of customization to the user, there are times where it does become handy because the user is an attribute that is attached to the HTTP request object that gets passed around all the time in Django code. So to be able to have a hook that if we needed to add a convenience method that is used all the time is something we want to try and do. So there is a mechanism that Django provides in order to override the user and use a different user model rather than the one that is provided by the user's app, or the auth app, I guess. So we need to set up that situation and create that model and then hook it in to the auth system to take advantage of those features that are provided by Django's auth. To do that, we're going to need a place to store that user model. So the very first thing I want to do is create a project, a Django app that will hold this first set of models that we care about. In a previous project, I called this users, but I was doing more thinking about it, and I had a users app and an accounts app, and it seemed kind of redundant. And so what I'm going to go with this time is a single accounts app that will hold both a user and ultimately an account object that will be able to connect to Stripe and have some other reference information in there. So if you're not super familiar with Django, a Django app is like a component that lives inside of a Django web application, and that's what we need to make. So let's start by doing that. We're going to do manage, and there's a command called start app, and I always forget exactly which parameters we need to supply. So I think we just need the name. Now, the challenge here is I want my Django app to live in a single directory because I want my code to be kind of localized. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an app and then we're going to move it into a directory, and it's going to mess with a little bit of the naming stuff. We'll have to tweak some things to get it going right, but that's okay. So let's try that out. Let's do manage, start app, and I want to call it accounts. Generally, the recommendation that I've seen with Django apps is to use the plural of a main concept that you're going to use. So rather than account, it's accounts, users, and so on and so forth. We're going to call this start app, and it's going to create a directory here. There's this new directory, but we don't want, like I said, I don't want it to live there. I want all of my code to live in a single Python package because all of the code for this whole software as a service is going to live in a single place. And that's going to include potentially some JavaScript code, some templates, a bunch of different things. And I kind of want to keep things bucketed in ways that I can find them easily and not have a million things in my top level directory. You may not care about that and want to have a really broad, wide, high-level directory, but if I'm trying to imagine a future where there's a bunch of different Django apps, and this could be a pretty cluttered view if you saw 10, 20, 30 different kinds of directories for different kinds of Python code that you're trying to represent. So let's see if we can contain that a little bit by creating another Python package. So I'm going to make a Python package, and I'm going to call it the same thing as the repository. So this will be the journal directory inside of the journal repo. And we need to also, to make that a Python package, we need to add an init.py file. So we've got that, and then we can move the accounts directory into the journal directory. So if I do a tree, which I should have installed on journal, we have our new structure where it's the journal directory, it's got accounts inside of it, you've got all these files that you can see here. Cool. I think we're ready to go from there. So the next thing I want to do is hook that into the Django actual project itself. Django, by default, it doesn't automatically just detect any code that's present. You have to explicitly add it, and that's I think a good thing. It means there's really no surprises of what's going to be added to your project. So there's this installed apps thing that's here, And I think that the thing we need to add is going to be journal.accounts will be the ultimate name for this. I don't know why environ is not resolving. Hold on a second. Let me get out of all of this and see, do we not have a virtual environment activated here? Why? That's weird. Okay, well, let's just activate that and then start a new Vim so that we can get the fancy syntax highlighting and stuff. Let's go back to that settings file. Not sure how that happened. Essentially, it was complaining about that import, and that's not really what I was after. Okay, so we've got journal accounts. I don't know that that's going to work yet. I think that we have to go, if we try and run the run server, it's probably going to complain and say, like, I don't know what this is. Can't find this thing. So the reason is because I created that start app and then I moved it to a different location. So it's not quite named properly. And we can cancel that and make sure that this is visible. And then we can go into the accounts app and come to this accounts thing. And the key thing that we need to have is the name be adjusted here. So because it's inside of a Python package, it's now should be journal.accounts. And if we do that and restart the web server, oops, that's not the right command. Now you can see that we have a new app included. Well, actually, you can't see it, doesn't show it there, but you can take it on faith that we didn't get an exception. So we've got this thing configured now. So there's now another app included. And Django is composed of these apps. And the way that things get routed together and put together is you write an app, and each one has its own different models which map to database tables, and they can have views which are kind of like controllers in MVC pattern, if you're familiar with that. Although I don't think I need to go into all of Django's design tonight, but we can go into that. If you have any questions, remember to drop them in the chat if they're there. So we now have our place for apps, and we now need a place to put our new model. So models is not going to be used yet. In fact, I'm going to delete this because instead what I want to do is from Django contrib, this is the place we need to go. We need to go to the auth section. We need to look at the models, and I want to import the abstract user. Now there's two different users there. Let's take a look at them in the docs. I think that'll be good to see. Django project.com, right? Documentation, and let's search for abstract user. And you can see there's this customizing authentication section here. And let's search again for abstract user. So there's two ways to go about this. One is to do what I'm about to do, which is this abstract user, which is kind of like predefined for you, and essentially gives you all the things that the regular user would be, but you give it your own user class, and then you can essentially just declare it like a pass like this. So that is a straight mapping of you're taking all the same things that Django's user would have. There is another one in here, the abstract base user. And I think that is the lower level one. I'm honestly blanking out on the difference of why you'd even use this one. I think it's what was the point of this? There's details in here of why you would choose one of the over the other. I remember having gone through this in the past, that my plan is to customize this user model only if I absolutely need to. So the abstract user is sufficient for most of my purposes here. So what we have to do is we have to create our abstract user model, and then we have to set this setting over in the settings file to tell Django to use our new model location. If you just created the abstract user, Django wouldn't know about it. It would just be another model that looked like a user, but from the perspective of the Django system, it wouldn't connect the dots that, oh, that's something that you actually want to use. So let's go over to our code and let's create our model here. We're going to say class user is the abstract user, and I'm just going to leave it as a pass right now, just like they had it in the code. We should probably document this in the future, but I don't really feel like it this time. In the future, I'll be better about doing the models here, but this one is just so close to what Django provides that it doesn't really feel like I'm adding a lot of value there. Okay, so we've got that. We need to go to the settings file and compare or set this new setting. And it's the auth user model is what we need to set. So let's create a new section for user stuff. Is there a place that already kind of feels like it? I mean, this is feeling a little bit like it. Auth password validation. Yeah, sure. Let's. So I don't find that comment super useful. Let's change this to be. We'll just call it auth. And auth, it can actually stand for two things. There's two kinds of auth to consider. The kind that we're really considering here is authentication. The other kind of auth is authorization. And the difference is authentication is about like proving you are you. And then authorization is about proving what you're allowed to do or defining what you're allowed to do. So where we're going today with this is mostly about proving you are you, like giving you the ability to log in and do all of that kind of stuff. All right, so let's take that attribute, the auth user model, and go ahead and put it here. Why not alphabetize these so we can do it after this validator? So auth user model is equal to, we'll set to our string of accounts. That's the name of the app that we want. And users, our new model. Okay. So we've got all of that. And then at this point, we should be able to do, let's see what happens if we run servers. It shows something. Oh, I messed up somewhere. Dependency on app with no migrations accounts. Oops. What did I do? Maybe it's the fuller path. Maybe it's journal. Might be that. It doesn't seem like it should be that way, but perhaps it is. Oh no. Oh no. Well, that's not an error that I anticipated seeing. So what's going on? We've got, here's our models file. We should not need to do any migrations. Dependency on app with no migrations. Well, I mean, I guess we can try and make some migrations. Okay, I guess, you know what it's doing? Okay. So because we're taking over the user model from the auth app, it's not running those migrations at all. That's like the only model that's in there, perhaps. And we're declaring that actually we're going to pay attention to our migrations over here. So by adding that, we now have something more realistic. So let's try running that run server command again, just to see if it kind of shows that we have stuff to do. It's now at least identified. There's the accounts thing there to run. For the moment, we can run migrations, and I'm going to use SQLite, the default configuration here, which would be a SQLite 3 database. So we can say migrate, and it's going to create a little local file here. And we're already ignoring that, but if we do a list direct on the directory, there should be, maybe it's in the project. Where did I put it? Oh, there it is right there. I'm blind. So there's this new db.sqlite3 file, and this is just a local development file. This will not be committed. It's in the Git, should be in the Git ignore to some degree, so that we won't commit this by accident. And it's a data file that we can use to kind of poke around with our local setup. In a more advanced setup that's more accurate and closer to what my production setup would be, we would run Postgres instead. But I find that while having some advantages, has more disadvantages than I like. So we're going to leave it with a simple setup here with what we've got. Okay, so we've got a new migration that is in this migrations directory. I'm going to run save on it so that black will format it. And you can see it's pulled in the user model from that abstract user. So it's got the ID, password, is superuser, all of these fields that come from the Django model. And those are kind of done for us. The other thing that we want to do that I think was in that customization documentation is overriding the admin. We want to use the same admin as the Django admin. So let's do that. we can go to the admin section of this new accounts app. And here we want to do this line. Let me just, you know what? This is exactly what we need. So why not? I want to do maybe a little bit different here. No, that'll work. It's fine. So we've got this. I will put a space between there and get rid of that. The admin site is the built-in Django admin tools, which is a good way to give you kind of a CRUD interface. That's create, read, update, and delete, standard operations that are on most models, and give you just a graphical user interface that you can do to manipulate these tools. This might actually be useful to see, do we have anything at all? So we've got this, but I don't even think that we have the admin itself set up. Actually, we do. Look at that. There is a strong recommendation from the Django community to change this link. This is like basically an invitation to say, hey, hack me if you can. You know, like there's nothing super secret about changing it. Like you can't rely on security through obscurity, but at the same time, you shouldn't make it so obvious to find where the administrative interface of a site is as you can. So what I'm going to do is, well, I'll leave all that comment there for now, but I'm going to rename this to something that is not admin. What would be a good name for Journey Inbox that is that we could use as an alternate to admin? Is there anything that's kind of like fun and playful that would be representative here? If you've got any thoughts, drop them in the comments, but I'm going to think for a second, see if I can come up with a decent name. I'm feeling pretty boring about this. I feel like I had better thoughts with my other project. I don't want to dwell on this forever either, so back office. I don't know. That sounds horrible. You know what? Let's keep it for admin in the moment, and I'll let my brain stew on that. Well, we can go poke at it. I want to actually show you what it is, and then we'll revisit this. So we've got our stuff migrated. We should now be able to do. I should run make, which is going to run our local Heroku command, which is going to start with our proc file that you could have seen last week. If you want to go check out last week's stream and see what I'm actually talking about there, you're welcome to. But we should be able to go to port 5000, and this is our Django site. But now we should be able to go to the admin like this, and whoa, we got some stuff going on here. All right, so there is some files that it's not finding. I have a feeling. Collins administrator, that might work. I'm wondering, like, the thing is, I kind of want to get like maybe a name that is not sounding like it's a super secret interface. And again, security through obscurity is not really the thing we're after, but it would be better than nothing. What is going on here? Why is it showing up? Aha, okay. Maybe we need to do, so probably what's happening right now is the admin is trying to get these static files. And, well, wait a minute, we're in debug mode, so it should be loading, I would think it'd be loading these. Why is it not loading these? I'm going to try and run a couple things and see if it fixes the problem, but this is not the way I'd like to go ideally. So let's try and run there's a command to collect all the static files. Static files are like JavaScript, CSS files, images, things like that. And they can live in a Django project in many different Django apps. But that's inefficient to find them on a web server. So there's a command that basically pulls them all together as part of the process. And so that command is called collect static. So I'll run that in a second. You'll see there's no static directory listed here, but if this does what I think it's going to do, it should drop a static directory right in the root. You have requested to collect static files at the destination specified in your settings, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, there's a way to force that. You don't get that message. Whoa, what's going on? You're using the static files app without having the static root setting to a file system path. Okay, we've got stuff to do apparently. Okay. Things you don't anticipate when you're starting a new project. And this is probably stuff that you too would hit and encounter if you're doing this yourself. So it's good to see it. It's sad that I am not aware of all the things that need to happen right away. That's my fault for not thinking ahead, but that's okay. We'll get there. So we need a place for our static files. This is the static URL that's already set. Static root, I think, can be just... Well, you know what did I pick for the homeschool project? Sometimes I'm going to cheat and lean on my homeschool project, which is my other project about this, because there's a bunch of stuff I really just don't need to reinvent the wheel here. Static root. I called it static files. Okay. And I think I did that for a reason, actually, because I think Heroku will look for this by default. So that's a good thing to make sure I'm remembering. So we've got the static URL and static files there. So let's go back over. And there should be a baster here. And we've got static URL. Let's make this alphabetical. Static root. And that's going to be equal to baster / static files. Oh, am I missing a setting, John? Static files ders? Yeah, I think you're right. I'll need that in the future. So that's when I actually have my own set of static files that I want to add separately. I will need that at a later time. I think we can get away with that for now without doing that. So what this setting is on this project, and we'll be replicating for my own project at some point, is we're going to have files that are like our CSS files. I'm planning to use Tailwind, and Tailwind is a CSS framework, I guess, is the best way to describe it. And it has a build process where it scans all of your templates for the different CSS attributes that it uses from Tailwind and gives you this minimal CSS file, as minimal as it can. And I need to output that somewhere. And so I'm going to output it into a static directory, and then the collect static will run on that static directory and bundle it up for Django's purposes. So it's kind of like a 1-2 step that has to happen in order to do that. But I'm not getting to that today, so I think we can get away with leaving that alone for now. And I might be wrong. Like we might have to, when we get to white noise and all of that, we'll get to that. But the goal here is really to try and set up auth tonight. So I hope I don't have to go down too many rabbit trails. Okay, so we've got static root. Let's try running collect static again. Hey, there we go. So now we've got this new thing. We want to make sure that static files is not saved. So let's go to our git ignore and go ahead and put that in there. So there's the git ignore. Is there a Django section already? Wondering how it got like the SQLite file. SQL? Yeah, there it is. Django stuff. So we can come here and we can say static files. And now we shouldn't have that in our status. Good. Okay, so let's try running it again, going back to the admin, and seeing if we got it this time. Oh, boo. Not working? What's going on? Why? Static admin CSS base. Why are you not found? That's not cool. Maybe you're right, John. Maybe it is that static files ders. Or what else could we be missing? So here's the homeschool settings for static files. Static. No. This is another advantage of having a previous project, is you can kind of cheat like this. So I guess it's an encouragement to you. Like, I've got my code out there. It's not perfect, but it can be a useful reference to you. So if you're running into a problem and you want to look at something that I know works, eventually the stuff that I commit in with the journal inbox will also be working, but clearly we're not quite there yet. Got to figure out what's going on here though. Why is our stuff not working this time? You know what, let's go ahead and take this. We know we're going to need it eventually. I don't think this is the problem, but let's add it. Static files dirs. And oh, I think I know what it is. I think I know. We'll run this one more time. I'm pretty sure this is going to fail, but I'm pretty positive I know where we need to fix it. Yep. All right. The challenge is we were looking in settings, but think about this. These are routes. We have to tell the web server where our static files are. Now, I can almost guarantee you that if we did the same thing and we ran run server, this is going to work. And oh, it's giving a warning. That's that thing we can comment out that warning. So we're not ready for this. That directory doesn't exist yet, so let's go ahead and comment it out. And restart this. There should be no warnings. Now we're on port 8000. I bet if we go to port 8000 admin, we will see all the files, and then I'll be able to explain why too. Hey, cool. Ooh, even like a dark mode thing here. Cool. So the run server is a dev tool server. It is specially configured to pay attention to where static files are meant to be. But if you are using, as I am, gunicorn as your local development server, you have to go ahead and configure the routes for that. So we're missing, I'm almost positive, what we're missing is some URL configuration that is in the url.py file. So we're going to go to our URLs file here. Well, I guess I already have it up once. Let's clean up. It's getting messy in here. And we can go to our URLs over here, and here is some critical stuff. Where'd it go? Oh, come on. I know it's in here somewhere. Static. Where are you? Am I not seeing it? I see the debug toolbar. Static. Did I put it? Might have moved it. No, I was using that for a different purpose. That's not it. Yeah, you're right, John. It's documented in the Django docs. I'm probably like wasting my time looking through this trying to find it. I thought for sure it was in a really obvious place that we could set from the URL. But I'm just wasting time. Let's go to the Django docs and look at how to configure this, because I'm missing something that's pretty evident. So let's go set it up. Static URL. How to manage static files. It's going to be one of these, which will tell us about the route that we need to set up that will allow this to start working. Or, oh, you know what? Maybe I did. I'm going to check one last thing, because I'm like, this is bugging me. Where is it? Is there a gunicorn? Where did I configure gunicorn? and then I promise we'll get back to something important. I thought it might be in a gunicorn setup, which maybe is the proc file. Oh, okay, I give up. Let's go look at this and find it. So we already have the URL that we need. What we need is like a special view, and it's going to be one of these two things. Let's look through this. Serving static files during development. Here's the section. And there it is right there. You can still manually serve them using the serve view. Not suitable for production. Yeah, totally. So, okay. Now I feel like I gotta search for this thing. Now that we've found what it is. Where did it go in the homeschool app? Settings, static. Really? I must have found some fairly magical way around that constraint. No matter. We'll stick with this for now. So we need to put in, essentially here, we're going to add, you know, there's something that's in the back of my head that is like saying, don't do this, that there was a better way to do it. Did I do it with a middleware? Did I do it with, all right, I gotta know. Sorry, y'all, detour. I promise we won't go long, although I keep saying that. So let's do a git log -a, which is kind of the, I think it's kind of the pickaxe, I think is what it's called, and search for settings static URL. Oh, boo. Am I doing that wrong? Was it S? Ah, booey. Git pickaxe. S. Okay. So you should be able to search for, which kind of tells me that, so what this is saying is that it's not able to find anywhere in the history of my homeschool app this static.url pattern, which is weird. Super weird, because it seems to indicate through the docs there that you would need to add this route. I bet it's white noise. I bet white noise does this for you automatically. That's my guess. Okay, well, we'll do this for now. I think we'll be able to rip it out later, because a different app, a different third-party app called White Noise that we'll use for static files, I think takes care of this in a development mode. But that's fine. In fact, we'll hard code it for now. We're not shipping to a production website yet, so I think it's okay for us to include this literally just in the regular URLs patterns here until we are ready to change how we are deploying this. So let's take this, well, I guess that's a list of static routes. So we want to do what they're doing here. And we'll change this, put in that, and so we are going to need the imports that go with it, which is these two imports. And those are both conf. They'll go up here. Now, okay. Let's see if we got it. Quite the detour. Oh, welcome. Glad someone from Russia is joining in. I'm not sure, what time of day is it in Russia right now? Is it morning? I would think. Okay, we can go back to our port 5000. Hey, there we go. We're now serving our static assets. Now the funny part is we did all this and we have no way to log in. We did not create any kind of user record. So we can go to the management shell and we will see if we do from what is it going to be? From journal.accounts.models import user, then user.objects.count should be 0, right? So there's no way to even log in on that development site. So you can see there's a bit of a bootstrapping problem. And this is a problem that you're going to have on the real site too. So this is not something you need to know how to do. You can create a super user with a special command that comes here. It's right in the Django stuff. And yeah, it's create super user. Thanks, John. Appreciate you dropping that note in the channel. So we want to run create super user. Now this is my problem. I need, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create a super user and then I'm going to write down the credentials because it doesn't matter. Because I feel like every time I do this, and if you've watched me stream long enough, you've seen me struggle through of like, what's that user again? I'm going to put it in the README so I stop asking that stupid question. So I'm going to create a super user. The super user is going to be Matt. And I'll do Matt at testing.com. This is the part I always forget. Sometimes I use testing, sometimes I use somewhere. And the password is going to be a junk password that I've used many times over, but we'll make it short. We'll just say create horse. Will that work? Will it accept that? Horse. Okay. So create. Let's write all this down. README. Local super user. Now this is only going to work while I have this potential database, but if I have this written down, maybe I'll come back and refer to this over and over again. Username, Matt, email, Matt, what'd I just say? Testing. See, I'm already forgetting. That's terrible. Password. Create horse. Now the full thing is like create horse battery staple, I think, is like the XKCD that I'm kind of referencing there. So if you're like, what is he doing? That's bizarre. So that's a shorter version of this. It's something that I'm gonna have to type it out more often. So let's try and keep it short. Okay, so if we go back to the server again and return to the admin, we should do Matt and create horse. And hey, look at that. We have a full Django admin that is completely uncustomized, except for that if this was the default, you would see users showing up under this authentication and authorization section. But because we made our own user, it's now showing up under accounts, which is our own Django app. And as we click on here, this is getting fancier. Right? They're doing some good improvement. And there's like a dark theme. Oh, look at that. So cool. Good. Way to go, Django devs. There's now, this is the user, and here's the stuff that we've got. And there's some information here about what can they do, blah, blah, blah. So this is the Django admin. It's a very useful tool for when you want to see model data, when you need to inspect something quickly. It's actually, I think, one of Django's superpowers. You don't want to abuse it and use it too much, but there are so many tools out there and web frameworks out there that don't include something like this, where if you need to look at any data, you have to get like on a database shell and do stuff like that, which great, you can do that. But having a UI that you can kind of click around in and explore is a little bit nicer, in my opinion. Okay, so where are we at? We have done a new app. It can log in right now. It has a migration. It holds all the data we care about. Let's go ahead and add all these files. What do I want to change? I'm not ready to commit this yet because there's things about the setup that I don't like yet. I do want to take 2 seconds to just like stare at the stuff that we just added. Make sure there's things in there that everything's okay. Yeah, I think there's some stuff that is in pre-commit too that will complain at us, but that's fine. First thing, all of my Django apps, I always delete this file. Not because I hate tests, quite the contrary. I really love tests, but I think stuffing all of the tests for a Django app into a single file is not a great way to go. Like, if that's you, go for it, but it's not the convention that I like to follow. I see some other standard conventions. So let's remove that file. So journal, accounts, tests, and we're going to replace it with a directory. And I want to add one test here, and it's going to take us down another rabbit hole that is, well, actually might be quite lengthy, but is very necessary. And that rabbit hole is that I want to make sure that I maintain throughout my app 100% test coverage. And this is super important. It's super important because I am going to be the sole person maintaining this app. So that means at any time, I want to make sure that what I've done, that I have confidence that it's going to work. I want confidence when I'm doing any kind of package upgrade. I don't want to miss anything. Now, tests don't guarantee that everything's going to work, but if you have at least 100% statement coverage, then the confidence bar goes way up for me, even more so than like 99. If you're missing 1%, then there's a gap there that I think is important to actually hit. So that's my view on it. Granted, I work in a professional setting where it does not have 100% coverage, but that professional setting also has a team of people that can work together and manage that. But for me, for this individual project, it's important that I have a single thing. Okay, so we are going to do a make directory, and we're going to create a new directory for tests. And we're going to go ahead and add a new, we're going to make this a package. Yeah, John, White Noise, if you haven't used it, it's a good tool. I'm seeing your comment now. It's a really solid tool. So let's stop and talk about Django and its tests. So Django comes with a built-in ability to do tests, and we can actually exercise it here. I think it's just manage.pytest. And you can see it's found no tests. There's nothing it's checking. So it's reporting back 0 is pretty fast. And you can, and many people do, use Django's built-in test stuff to great effect, and are really happy with that. For me, I have grown very partial to using pytest as my preferred testing tool. And I think pytest comes with a lot of powerful features, but the nicest and the simplest one that I think it makes it so appealing is that all of your assertions in your tests use the assert keyword. And that leads to tests that are really, in my opinion, very easy to read. So we're going to switch and use pytest-django as the test runner. There's some bunch of configuration changes we're going to have to do to make that happen. So to start, I think it's pytest-django, but I don't know what version it is. Yeah, here it is. Don't do this one. I don't know. People do this stuff. It's like, well, it looks like maybe this is just old, but sometimes they're nefarious, or people that put near names in there. So watch out for these things. So pytest-django is the package, and it's the extension with the that uses pytest as a test tool, which is a popular testing library. So we're going to go add that. And this is going to be one of those things that I don't need to install in my production environment, so I don't want to put it in my requirements.txt. Instead, I want to put it in my requirements.dev file. So let's go to requirements.dev. And over here, we will do pytest-django. And then we'll go over this, and we'll pip install our requirements.dev. And you can see that pulled in pytest and it pulled in pytest-django. That are the tools that we'll need. Let's read the documentation. There's some stuff we have to configure to make this work, and then we'll get everything going. I'm also going to need to make some changes to my my Vim setup in order to use pytest internally, because actually something that I like to do often is if we go to a test file and I try and run it, although it doesn't think this is a test file, it's going to use a different test runner by default. It's going to try and use the Django one because it's going to detect this is a Django project, and I have to convince my test runner to see this differently. It's not a just using the Django test runner is using pytest. So that's a customization that I do as well. Okay, so now if I deactivate and reactivate this to get visibility for the new package that I installed, we should have pytest available. And you can see here too, pytest doesn't know about any tests. It doesn't even know that it's using Django. Well, I guess it figured it out. It figured out that pytest-django is installed. So let's go over here and configure this thing. We can do this in a pytest-ini file. We can also do that in a pyproject file, I'm pretty sure. So this is where I will probably steal from the homeschool project. There's no sense in recreating that wheel. So let's do nvim pyproject toml, and let's look for pytest. Yeah. Just below. Was it? Yeah, you're right. I did. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Recommended but optional. Why did I put that in here? Because there's some other stuff in here that I think was useful, like this test paths things that is there, and the filter warnings, and I'll talk through those actually. So let's go ahead and pull all this stuff and take it over to our test area. And do I have a pyproject toml file yet? I do. Pyproject toml. Oh, I already even had this in here. I forgot that I left some of the stuff commented out for later usage. So we're now ready, I guess, for this step. We're going to take this out, and I'm going to switch this to journal. It's going to basically say, like, look in the journal directory for tests, because again, there's going to be a future where we have things that have nothing to do with Python, and I don't need to search my entire repository when I can get away with less. Additionally, I don't think that there's any need to have an ignore right now, so we can get rid of this, but I do want to have this filter warnings section on, and that's what that does is exactly what that comment says. It elevates any warning that appears from pytest and turns it into an error, so that way that I'm forced to figure out warnings and what to do with them. And we will create a testing settings file in just a moment, and then we'll have to fix some stuff on add options here, because there's a couple things that I want to use, but I'm not ready for all of them yet. So let's try and run it and see how things should fail at this point. Okay, so first thing it's saying is, hey, you don't have testing settings. So I need to create a different settings file. So we have our default settings file, but I like to use another settings file, and I don't call it test settings because then pytest would look at that as a test file, which it shouldn't. Although I guess it wouldn't do that because I've set the test paths, so it's going to not pay any attention to project. But I want to make sure that it doesn't look like a testing file of any kind. So let's go create that. And it's one of the very few times that I am okay doing a star import. So we're going to create testing settings.py. Then we want to say from settings import star. Flakegate's going to yell at me for this, and we'll have to turn that off. But why are we doing a star import here? So we really do want a bunch of imports, or a bunch of settings that we've already defined. Those are already accurate, and we want our testing stuff to be reasonably close to what the real settings are. So we want to pull from that other settings file. The reason I would create this file is there's some things that we absolutely never want to have happen. For example, I never want these unit tests, which is what we're running, to accidentally send emails. So my email setup, ultimately in that other settings file, will be all driven by configuration. And if I ever had my configuration configured for real stuff to SendGrid, I could be sending in a bunch of automated tests, a bunch of real emails. And that just would be bad. It either would send emails to real people, which would be even worse, or it would send just create a bunch of API calls that were unnecessary. So by having a testing file, there is an opportunity to take any of the settings and hard code them to something that you know is going to be safe. Again, we can cheat a little bit and look at kind of what's in the testing settings file and give you some feel for that. There's some other optimizations in here that we'll use as well, like an in-memory database and some other things that, and we'll probably steal some of this stuff later. I'm kind of wondering if I should steal it now. Should I steal it now? No, we can get by with it without it now. We'll revisit that in the future. So we now have our testing settings, which is essentially at this point just an alias to the actual settings file, but that's okay. We'll change that in the future, and we should be able to run this, and it's still going to fail because it's going to complain about an option that's not there. Yeah. So there's a package that I haven't incorporated yet, but we will, that gives us the ability to turn off sockets. And when I run my unit tests, I don't want anything talking to the network. I think that really leads to tests that are very unreliable, and I want to actually test the behavior as it will behave at the network. And so what the testing package that I'm missing right now does is it essentially turns off all network activity, and anytime you do reach out to the network, it will detect that at the socket layer. It does some fancy stuff there with sockets that is kind of crazy, but it will detect that and then kind of raise that error and say nope, you tried to connect to whatever, maybe some port number or some IP address or a domain, and it'll say, hey, this is not allowed, and you have to explicitly opt into that for those kind of tests. So should we just go ahead and add it? I think it might just be one additional thing to install. Let's look over here at requirements dev. Yeah, pytest socket is what we want. So let's take that and let's go to requirements dev and put that in here. We've got pytest socket. I probably should pin these dependencies in the future because they're not currently pinned, but that's okay. So let's do that pip install, which will get the new one. And now if I run pytest, it shouldn't complain anymore. It still ran no tests, so it's still not happy. You can see my prompt is a little red arrow instead of green arrow, which means that the outcome of that pytest run was angry and a not happy status. So we still have more work to do. All right. What do I need to do? What am I trying to do? What did we just add? We added an abstract user, right? So we added a real user using the abstract user. I want to test for that model, at least to kind of say that we can create one, and there's going to be another tool that we have to add. So what I'm doing right now, actually, to make it really clear, it's like, what is this? These guys are kind of all over the place. I am going deep on a particular topic as the first time we encounter it. And I'm going ahead and setting up the tools that we're going to need in the future. So we will spend time doing the modeling and getting into the other bits, but there's a bunch of tools when you start from scratch that just aren't set up yet. They take time, and essentially my hope is that you can see these pieces and see as I add each one how they start to fuse together to give me a setup that can give me confidence that in what I'm doing. And it's the safety net. It's the safety net that you need. Well, you don't need it, but it's the safety net that's really beneficial, especially if you're trying to make a project on your own. So we're going to spend the time to go in and set up all of these appropriate safety nets and tools, and then eventually there's going to kind of like an 80-20 sort of rule is we'll get most of that setup done, and then every time I hit another one or two things, I'll add in a little bit more. But there's just going to be a certain amount of upfront friction in order to make sure that we have all those safety nets. And testing is just one of the unavoidable ones. Like testing is really important. So we got to get that right. Okay, let's go to the test section of this accounts app and create our first test file. So I want to test, and it's going to be one test here. We are going to create a models test file. So the convention is to use test underscore and then the matching name of the file within the app. So we have a lot of test models, test views, and so on. And from there, we'll create a test for the user. So we'll say class test user. And notice I'm not using Python's built-in unit test case class. I'm just using a class to create a bucket for users to go, or our user tests to go for future tests. And it's a way, like if I have multiple models within a single Django app, I can kind of at least group them together. And there's ways to execute just at that particular level of the class. So we'll say test factory. Now I haven't talked about factories at all, so that's just going to be like what? So we have this, and I'm going to go ahead and write the code that I want to exist in the world, and then we will make that work. So we need a factory. Factory is a tool to make test data from a model. There's lots of times where my philosophy of testing Django apps that is shared by a lot of the community is to test with a real database, like use the database. In this case, it'll be a SQLite database, but that is a real database, and create that that thing at the database layer, so that when your test is running, it is querying against that thing. And versus the alternative is to an alternative strategy is to completely like mock out the database layer and return back objects that you would work with that are kind of domain objects like a user, but they're not created from an actual database. Instead, they're created by synthetic means. I find that using the factory pattern, the trade-off between speed and accuracy is nice. Like I can have a lot of confidence that if I can create an actual user object that gets persisted in the database, then it's closer to the real thing, I guess is where I'm going. It's a little bit more like an integration test, and many would argue that it is an integration test, but I'm okay with that. I still think of them as unit tests when it comes to Django. So we have a user factory, or we will have a user factory, and we want to assert that the user first name, which is an attribute of this, or maybe we can just do it as simply as user is not none. That's probably even enough of the test. So I can try and run this from my test runner, and here's where I need to do a couple things. So test user test factory missing. That's not the error I expected, but okay. It's also not the runner that I wanted to use. So I mentioned I have to do some stuff with my Vim setup, and this is another one I'm going to cheat and use Vim over here. Now you don't really need to worry about this one. This is very specific to my particular editor. So what I'm doing is I'm customizing what Vim will see as configuration for this particular directory. But if you're a PyTest user or whatever, that doesn't really matter. So I need to create this file, vimrc local. Vimrc local.vim, and paste in this little chunk of Lua code, or no, it's even just Vim code. And I want to tell that it's trusted, so it's now a trusted file. What's going on here? Where am I? I'm going to restart Vim there to make sure that will work. We'll go back to our test file that we have, And if I try and run the test again, it should run pytest now. Now this is what I expected to see. User factory is not defined. So we need to actually create where the user factory is going to go. And I want to say from journal.accounts.tests. And this is where I'm going to put it. I'm going to put it in a factories file in this directory. And we'll say user factory. Now it's still, my editor is still pretty smart and it knows that that doesn't exist. But we'll just work at one piece at a time. So we're going to go up, we're going to create a file called factories.py. All right, now it's time for yet another tool to go install. So let's go back to, whoops, not Chrome. Get out of here, Chrome. Let's go back to PyPI over here and look for Factory Boy. Factory Boy is an awesome tool. It is one of my favorite testing tools and highly recommend it. But Factory Boy gives you the ability to make these factories. So Factory Boy can know about your models and then from them inspect the attributes that are on the model and create representative data. Why do you need this? Factories are useful because in a context where you have an object in Django, you might have an object that has, let's say, multiple foreign keys. That's the easiest way to show the value of Factory Boy. Creating an object that requires multiple foreign keys that are not nullable would mean you'd have to create instances of all of those other things that something might depend upon. And Factory Boy has the ability to say, okay, if you need a foreign key, I can go ahead and if you define another factory, I can go ahead and create that too. So I can, if you have something that's complex, I can create the whole tree of objects you need in order to give you an instance. And it gives you powerful tools to ignore most of the details about a user, but then create kinds of like, or not just users, but any kind of object and specify the attributes that you do care about in a test. And what it really does is it makes your test code much more concise because it does all of this like kind of tedious work for you that can also obscure what you see in a test and just creates factory instances that serve your exact purpose for your test. Okay, so we need to have Factory Boy installed, and I'm going to go back to our requirements dev file, and we'll go Factory Boy. What was the version? 3.2.1. How nice. 3.2.1. And we can do pip install. It goes to get Factory Boy, which apparently still is using 6. Wow, that's interesting. So we can return over here, go back to our test models file, maybe, or our factories file. And then we've got an example from Factory Boy, or we should, I would think. Here's the Django example. This is what we need. So we import factory. Yeah. I think we just do import factory. Oh, I've got 2 of them open. Get out of here. Lowercase f, Matt. And then we can create our factory. So it's going to be that the class name is going to be user factory, and it's going to be factory.django. What was it? Django model factory? I think that was what it was. And okay, hold on. NeoVim is not seeing this because I installed that package after. I want my VSP to see this. Okay, there we go. So now we can say we have to give it an attribute, a meta class that it cares about. Then we have to tell it where the model is. So we say model and then we give it the actual model, the actual model class itself, or the string path to that model. In this case, it's going to be accounts.user. All right, now if we go and open that test models file, we have the factory, and we can run this specific test, and we can see that, ooh, interesting, database mark. We have to do a fixture to enable this. Now this is where I get annoyed with pytest. I am gonna just, again, this comes back to some testing philosophy. Some people will say, don't set up the database for every test. That way the tests that don't need the database can be ultra super fast, and the tests that don't that do need it can be use the database. I am going to set up a special fixture that's going to make that run all the time, because I actually want it to run all the time. So we need to go back to pytest-django for a minute and look at this configuration. Pytest-django comes with, I think it's in this section, comes with some fixtures. And you can see here all the fixtures, and fixtures are just things that are very easily usable by pytest in your testing. And there's some fixtures in here related to the database. And I'm trying to remember, there's like 3 of them. You can say use the Django DB mark, or the DB, or the transactional DB, and I'm trying to remember which one we actually need. So here's the DB mark. This fixture will ensure the Django database is set up. It's only required for fixtures that want to use the database themselves. A test function should normally use the mark, Django DB mark, to signal. See, this, I find this annoying. The mark is like a decorator that you need to add on a function, a test function. And to me, it's just not my favorite thing to do. So, because I view it as like noise. But what would that look like? If we wanted to do that, we could do import pytest, and then I could use it as, I should be able to use it as a class decorator. I should be able to say pytest.mark.django-db. So that's a way of saying that the entire test class, hey, we've got a passing test, is marked as a Django DB. And that's fine if I actually cared to have tests that weren't going to use the database. But let's think about this for a minute. Almost every single test that I'm going to write in my system, I just know this, is going to use the database to some capacity. I'm going to use factories very extensively. So having having a thing that will automatically set that would be just nice to have. So how can we do this? We can do this by creating a fixture of our own. And we'll do that. So with pytest, you're able to create your own fixtures. Pytest fixtures. Let's go look at that really quickly. And there's a file that you can put them in. And I'm drawing a blank on the name of the file that we have to call it. It's kind of embarrassing that I'm drawing a blank on it. It's pytest something. Like, this is the fixture we need. What's the fixture file? Anybody know it off the top of your head? Sure, I'll find it in here if I spend a little bit more time, but because pytest has many levels of you can do fixtures like at different portions of this, fixtures for entire directories, and all sorts of different fanciness, which we don't really need for a lot of this. That's shocking that it's like not, either I saw it and just my brain went right over it, or it's not obviously here. Conf test. Y'all, why didn't you start with conf test at the top? Okay, this is the name of the file that we need. And so PyTest will look for what's in this conf-test file and use that. All right, so since we're not, I'm gonna keep it this set up this way. So we're back to the state where it's broken and saying you need to set a fixture. And I'm gonna come up to our top level testing directory here, which maybe I'll just put it at the very top of the whole project. Is that where I want to put that? Do I have a conf test? Conf test? Oh, wow. I don't have a conf test. Oh, I did it with a different technique for the other homeschool app. So for the moment, let's try putting this at a root conf-test.py. And if there was if I was to do another project, oftentimes like if I'm doing a library, I'll have a split where I have a source directory and a test directory, and I would put it in the test directory, but that's not the case here. That this is an application, which kind of makes this a little bit awkward. I could put it in journal. Maybe it'll end up there, but let's start here. So we want to import, I don't even actually need a, yeah I do. We want to import PyTest. And I'm going to make my own fixture. And the way to do that is with a decorator. And we say PyTest fixture is the decorator. And you can see here are all of the attributes that can be on this fixture decorator. And there's one important one that we need to use, and that is the auto use. There's an auto use fixture, which is normally set to false, which means that a fixture will only be used if you use it in a test function in a certain way. But I want to say, no, use this all the time. All right, so that's step one. The next thing to do is create the actual function and give it a name. Now, here's something where I'm taking advantage of knowledge that I have. Fixtures, whenever they're used, are oddly done by alphabetical order at some level. And so I've seen cases where where if you don't name something in the way you're about to see, you can have a sequence where a fixture above it that needed the database would run and blows up in your face. So here's the little trick that I've done. It's really kind of crude, but it seems to work in my experience. I name it something like this, AAA, to put it like really early alphabetically. Because how many things are named? You know, I guess you got aardvarks, but if you get to triple A's, that's really unlikely. So I call it AAA DB. And then whenever you want to use a fixture, you list a fixture as an argument to that function, or as a parameter more accurately. So I'm going to say DB again. That's the fixture we want to use. That was the one that was defined over here that's saying, like, instead of using the mark, you could use this DB fixture. We're going to use the DB fixture, and then we don't need our fixture to do anything. We're just going to say pass. And we're going to ignore this error that's coming from some kind of tool. So DB is not accessed is correct, but this is what we're doing is we're relying on PyTest's dependency injection mechanism, and then we're relying on this auto use true feature to make sure that our fixture is being used all the time. So if everything went right, PyTest will run right now. It'll find conf-test, find the fixture, use the fixture, and then not fail on this test. Let's see if I got it right. All right, really cool. It did. If you have any questions about that, let me know. That was quite a bit of a labyrinth maze thing. So I can understand how that might be a little confusing. Okay. In fact, there's a way to see which fixtures are in use. So if we run pytest, we'll see we've got that. There's one test that runs. And if we run pytest.h, we got a bunch of different options here. And one of these will show you all the fixtures that are in use. What's it called? It's not one of these core things. Show fixtures per test? Maybe that's it. So you can list out all the fixtures that are available in total, but I think it might be this thing. PyTest fixtures per test. Let's try that. That doesn't strike me as what I remember. No. That's not the one I'm looking for. There's another one that will like show you the fixtures that are used for a particular test, which is sometimes necessary to see as you're trying to debug what's going on with your test. And I'm trying to find that because it is useful. Show setup or setup show. Show setup of fixtures while executing. Yeah, that's the one. So pytest show setup. Whoops, or setup show. I got that backwards. Setup show. There we go. It's a lot of output, but you can see there's actually a lot of stuff that happens every time we're running that one test, which is why, you know, computers are fast, but it still takes 0.07 seconds to run this one test. And the reason is because it's running all this code. It's running all of these features to set up a test database, to check with migrations and use all of that. Although I want to turn that off in a little bit. And so on and so on, until we get down to the actual tests, which is this one line right here that is actually doing the test function and telling you which fixtures to use, which is a lot of them because it had to use that database thing. And then there's a bunch of stuff on the teardown. And somewhere along the way, oh, okay, they did even something fancier where they used an underscore. That's interesting. But this naming becomes important. Haran, welcome. Good to see you again. We are digging into users and sign up stuff today, but we're having to do the setup related to all of the testing that goes around this stuff in order to make sure that we have the safety nets that we need. So I think we're kind of done for now. There's some speed optimizations that are missing here, like that I think are coming from some makefile targets. No, I got those too, pretty sure. Let's go back to our PyProject toml. Yeah. So notice that I'm setting this with no migrations. So right now we're running the app without doing the migrations, but that's not necessarily a safe thing to do by default. It's a speedy thing to do. But if you want to test that your migrations are working, you want to run with the migrations setting. So there's probably one more thing that we have ignored here that we can go check. Let's go back to our makefile and bring in some of the stuff that's in there. So some of the commands that I had in the makefile were commands to run the test suite. And we actually don't have coverage yet. So, okay, there's one more thing to do. Blah, blah, blah. So I want to do this. No, let's punt on this. We'll do this part another day. When we get down to setting up CI and continuous integration, that's what CI stands for. We'll need these targets because I'm pretty sure I used them in the actual configuration file for that. But we don't strictly need that today. Let's stay a little more focused because we've already gone down quite a few rabbit holes here. Okay, so I'm gonna look at this. Let's take one last look before we commit this, and I think we're ready to move on to the next portion of this. And I don't know how much we're going to get to today because it's already an hour and a half in to get this far, but we'll start. So we've got our first app. It's got our user model in it, and we have tests set up and ready to go. See if it gets through all the imports. It does not. Did it fix those or not? Oh, boo. I think there are some things that the migrations will not, or black will not correct. We have to say no QA on those lines. Let's go into that file, correct that. We also need to go into the views file that we didn't touch and get rid of that and clean that up. And we need to go in that testing file and tell it to shut up about some stuff. So testing, first thing we want to do here first thing I really want to do is I want it to show when those problems are not present. So let's quit out of here. I think the reason it's not showing is because Flake 8 is not installed or something to that effect. But that should be coming from Mason. So what's going on here? Again, this is more to do with my own editor rather than anything else. There's Flake 8. It's already installed. G5349, thank you for the thumbs up. Not sure what you're thumbsing up there, but I'm grateful. Why is it not showing there? All right, let's try it again. Testing settings. Now, in the ideal world, this would say, hey, you can't do this because it's going to match up with what we saw in this thing, this error right here. This one. But that's not happening. I can't explain why that's not happening. You know, I've had some weird stuff before where I've upgraded Python and then my Go server or the stuff here is not updated with it. So if we say uninstall, or I think that was what I just did, and then update. Oh boy, I might have just set off a bunch of chain of stuff that I don't want to do. Okay, not gonna worry too much about it, I guess, and we'll just fix it. What the fix that we need to do here is we need to say, shut up. That's what this no QA line is doing. Like, I know what I'm doing here. I explained to you all why I'm doing it. It's specifically for a purpose. It's like one of those few times that we actually do want to import everything and like what indiscriminately. The other way to run this is you could be very explicit about what you're actually importing. Like import all the settings, but I don't know why anybody would want to do that. So that should correct that one. And then we can go to the migrations file, the 0001 file, and go to the lines that were complaining, which was, what is that? 40. It's too long. So again, tell it to be quiet. This is again stuff where it's like, this should be, Flake 8 should be reporting here, and it's not. So 40, 50, and one more. No, there were two more. 89 and 103. 89, 103. Okay. Now all of those things should be fine. And then finally go to our views file that we're not doing anything yet and just clear it out. That should be okay. It's going to save it as empty, but that's totally okay. So let's add those back to the Git stage, and we're ready to commit. All right, so what is this? We'll say, John, good question. I will check on that if I added matching line lengths in Flake and Black. I thought I did, but it's possible that something is missing that configuration. We will confirm. So we'll say add accounts, app, user model, and pytest-django plus factory boy. That's a lot of stuff in that commit. Okay, great. Let's check on that line length thing. Because, here's why I think it's not just the line length, is because the other Flake 8 issues that were gonna appear did not appear. So I think it's more than just line lengths. I think something is just not going right with my Vim setup. Which, John, you might have been, I think you were here for another one of these where it like wasn't working. And it just wasn't working. And that's what I ultimately like ended up doing. I had to reinstall because something got messed up. So now that I've reinstalled everything, maybe I can go back to that file, the testing, and see if I can get rid of this and if it'll show up. Boo. Come on. Mason. They're all installed. All right. I'll figure that out later. That's one of these. I did say I'm going to commit to making sure that all this code is live streamed, but my editor configuration is not something that you all need to necessarily see. And we got bigger fish to fry. All right, let's talk about what's next. Django, for all its goodness, does come with a minimal amount of configuration when you want to change the authentication setup. So if you want username and password, you're covered. But I don't want just username and password. I want something that is about email and password. And the email is really important because I need to know where to send you an email. Because as a reminder, this is a journaling app that is going to send you prompts that you reply to via email. If I don't have your email address, then I can't send you an email. So in order to reduce the friction, your email address will be your username. There's a consequence to that in some point in the future, somebody might want to change their email and use a different primary email or something like that we may have to account for. But that's like a way advanced feature in my mind. So instead, we're going to set it up with the tools that I have used before, and we're going to make it possible to do an email signup flow. And to do that, we're going to use another excellent package. I'm using a bunch of some of the Django's greatest hits kind of things here tonight, which is good. You start with a good solid base with really reliable stuff, and then you go from there. So let's go back to PyPI. And the thing that we want is a project. I think it's called django-allauth. I don't think it's called just allauth, but yeah, this is it. So django-allauth is like the Swiss Army knife of authentication for Django. We are only going to use a fraction of it, but if you are at a point where you're thinking about, I want to set up a SaaS, a software as a service, there we go. Wow, can't believe I blanked on that for a minute. And you want to consider other types of authentication, then this might be something that's really useful. You can see that all of your favorite ways to authenticate are here, whether that's Google or LinkedIn or, I don't know, Twitter. There's a bunch of stuff here about different methods of authenticating. So these are what you can think of as the common stuff you'd see of log in with Google, log in with Facebook, those buttons that follow those flows. But again, my primary goal is to capture your email, not because I'm wanting to market and spam you, but because it's the core of the service is to send you emails. And you're kind of opting into that when you're signing up. So one of the things that it provides as a sign-up option is not only email address verification, which is cool, but also the ability to use email as the username, which is really nice. Yeah, John, I do see your question there. Why not use a username, but in the profile make email a mandatory field? That is a way that I could go about it. I think the reason that I'm going this route is to have even less friction. I want there to be as few excuses as possible to signing up. And if the flow is give me your email address and give me a password, and that's it, that's about as low friction as I can make it. You need to be able to authenticate and prove you are who you are, so you need a password, and I need to be able to send you email. So those two things are the absolute minimum bits of data that I can record about you before I can start making the service work. And if I'm doing a third thing, then I think even just a third thing would have some kind of fall off on user stuff. That's my theory anyway. And that's the path I'd like to walk down. To optimize for simplicity. I think there's value in being a simple service. So that's the kind of sign up that I want to do. So this is django-allauth, and we will install that and start to configure it. Now, the trick with django-allauth is that there are a bunch of configuration options, and that's the unfortunate reality for something that has so many options available to it. So it's going to take us a little while to march through each bit of this in order to get that going. But that's what we have to do. Okay, let's go through that, and then we'll go through setting by setting and see which ones we need and don't need. And again, I might lean on the homeschool app a little bit to remind me of certain attributes, because there are things that I had over there. So we want to go to our requirements in file, and I want to come back to, what was the version number on PyPI? We want django-allauth 54, 0.54. I love groups that are like, it's never 1.0. We're never going to commit to, this project that's been around for 10 years or something. It's just hilarious. Everybody has their own views on versioning, I guess. django-allauth 0.54.0. Cool. And then we need to say pip compile requirements. Whoops. Did I mess something up? Yep, I did. 2 equals. What did that message say? Do we need to change something? Warning. The legacy dependency resolver is deprecated. Okay. And will be removed in future versions of piptools. The default resolver will be changed to backtracking in piptools 7. Specify resolver backtracking to silence this warning. Oh my goodness. The default resolver. So this is like saying if you want to opt in to the new behavior already. All right, let's try and run it and see if it's going to produce anything different. So here's all the stuff that we're pulling in just by using django-allauth. So let's add that to the get stage for a moment, and then let's try the same command again, but we'll try it with the new flag. Resolver equal backtracking, I think it said, and then requirements.in. Let's see if it produces any different result. Nope. All it does is modify the command in the line. So we're good. I'm not going to keep that. Instead, we'll just have our new packages here. So then we'll do pip install. We want to get both. Oh my word. Pip install both requirements dev and requirements txt. I'm going to go get all those new packages for us. Great. They're all available. Let's go back to the docs. We don't need the rationale. I told you my rationale for it. We've got this overview page. Blah, blah, blah. A bunch of... Whoa! Look at all that. We just saw the short version. These are all the actual providers. Man, I thought that was a pretty extensive list already, but this list is insanely long. That's super cool. Features, architecture, cool. Let's go to install. We have to have Django contrib sites as an installed app. Do we have that? Don't know. Settings. Django contrib. Okay, so we got to add a new thing here for the sites app. Django contrib sites. And I think that's going to require a site ID. Yep. We have to set this site ID equal, yeah, thanks, John. Site ID equal 1. That's part of the, it's just part of the sites app. I don't really want to get into what that's all about. Just know it's something that's needed. So let's put our extra apps and stuff, though, that configuration at the bottom. Is that what I want to do? Yeah, sure. We'll call this section sites. We'll put in the site ID of 1. I think that should still work. In fact, I'm curious, will it blow up if we don't include this? Because now we've got the contrib site. That's curious. Whoops, no. Oh, we don't have one there. Okay. Admin. No such table, Django site. Okay, there's a migration there too, I guess. Going to have multiple sites of growth. Yeah, the Django sites feature is a curious one. So it's got a migration. So we added that. It's got its own migrations that we'll have to run. And I have a feeling if we try and run migrate, it's gonna maybe fail. Didn't fail. All right. I know for a fact that this is going to be needed eventually. So let's go ahead and put it in. I don't remember why, but I don't know. And we might need to actually undo. Oh, geez. Manage migrate sites 000. Is that how you do it? No. 0. Yeah, there it is. So that's like rolling back all the migrations for that app, and then we can migrate it again. It probably defaults to a site ID of 1, but we'll set it that way. And then we should be able to go here, refresh, and we're back to healthy. So it's good to, like, as you're making these small changes, or seemingly small changes, recognize that other stuff can jump out on you. All right. Back to the install guide. Whoa! Holy moly. So we have Django templates. They want us to check on the app config. Let's go to the template section. We have app DIRs true, which is what we need. We don't have DIRs yet. That's fine. We'll set that later. And we have the context processor for the request, which is right here. So I think they're telling us like the minimum stuff that we'll need. Yeah, John, I have not added the social apps either. I guess I think the truth is, like, probably it's somebody wants to come in here and they're going to add, you know, if anything, they're going to add this one, Google, or you know, there's probably, you know, here it is, Facebook. Those are probably the 2 most popular by far and away. So we've got the template settings that we need to modify. We need to set authentication backends, which is not going to be, whoops, in visual mode. Authentication backends is another setting. Yep. So let's come over here. We've got this auth section. We'll put it right here. And I'm going to copy this because we need both of these backends. And the reason I'm not putting this in a separate section is because this is a Django setting. This is not a, the way I've got my settings set up typically is that the Django settings are at the top, and I've kind of put third-party or contrib section stuff lower as necessary, although I'm less likely with contrib because I kind of think of any of the contrib apps, that's contributed applications that are kind of extra and built in Django, as part of Django for the most part. So they're commenting on why this is still here. So if we want to use the Django admin, we need to continue to use the model backend. So we're leaving that there. And then this authentication backend right here is for the all auth version. So we've got those two. All right, let's go back to it. Now we need to go to the installed apps and get this figured out. We need contrib auth, contrib messages. Got auth and messages, and we also need sites, which is already there. That's the one we just added a moment ago. Okay, and then we need all auth account. I don't know if we need social account, because I think that might only be needed for the providers. Save that somewhere. For each OAuth provider, either add a social app, a social account app. Okay, I think it, yeah, no, only if adding providers. Yeah, I think you're right, John. So I think we really just need the top two, all auth and all auth account. Okay, so again, I kind of view, I don't know why I said again, I haven't talked about this before. I view the installed apps as much as possible like I view my imports. So in Python imports, you kind of have standard library, and then your third-party libraries that you add, and then your local stuff. I apply a similar logic to Django. So Django installed apps, the standard library in this case is Django. That's what I put at the top. And then I put third-party, and then I put my local stuff, which is going to be journal. So that means that I'm going to put all auth and all auth account right in the middle here. Hopefully that logic makes sense. All right, so now we've got this stuff going, that stuff going. We've got a site ID. We have social account providers. Do I need that at all, or can I leave that totally empty? I think I can probably just leave that out if I'm not including this at all. And then we need to add this path to our URL patterns. Let's go do that. Oh, empty? It has to be there, John. So let's come in here and add path. That's going to be to accounts. Now here's where this gets a little weird, because I've got accounts and then I created an accounts app. It's kind of a little bit in conflict. I think I'm okay with that. I think I can add, if I have specific views that I need to add in addition to accounts, I can kind of put them after. And we need to have include, which comes from the Django URLs here. That should do that. All right, so I think we've done all the main configuration. You can use the URLs provided. Note that you do not necessarily need the URLs provided by Django contrib auth URLs. Instead of login, log out, and password change, among others. Well, I don't know that I've used any of those auth URLs yet, so it doesn't matter. I have the admin site URLs, which has its own kind of login, log out stuff, but I've not used the actual stuff from auth. We'll have to set our own. Okay, now that we're all set up there, in theory, we should be able to do migrate, add a site for your domain, matching site ID, add a site for your domain. I wonder if that's a little bit of manual configuration they need us to do. Let's check it out. I think there might be a default one that comes, so it might be okay. So we've got these new settings that we added here. And we'll do manage migrate to add the new Oh man, that's going to get confusing. We've got account and accounts. Oops. It's okay. Let's try running this again. Let's see what we get. Go back to refresh the admin. Seems to work. And then I said my username was Matt and correct horse, right? What? Please enter the correct username. Correct horse. What did I do? What's going on? Create horse. Thank you. Jeez, I already forgot my password. Terrible. Appreciate the check there, John. All right, so now we've got, yeah, it's definitely a little confusing because there's accounts here, and there's the accounts app that I created, and there's the account app that they created, but then Django, either they pluralized the name or Django pluralized it for them. So this is the email addresses that come from allauth. It's unfortunate, but whatever. We've got this that we'll need to customize later when I'm actually on the admin for my real site. Or I might have to do, there's some things, actually, I should comment on this. There are things that I'm going to have to do for this app where I will do my best to show you all of the code. But when it comes to secrets and configuration, there are some of those bits that I just am not really comfortable showing on stream because these are things that like are references to real API keys and so on and so forth. I hope you understand, but I will do my best where I can to describe the kind of changes that I made. I guess to start off, for instance, I bought a domain name, and I'll spend 1 minute to talk about that. I bought the domain Journey Inbox. I mentioned that at the beginning of the stream. So that's going to be the name of this service. And I bought that domain from Cloudflare. The reason I bought it from Cloudflare is kind of twofold. First, Cloudflare has something cool where they are now acting as a registrar for domains and charging literally only the amount that it requires to buy the domain. They are not marking up domains, which I think is really cool. From a cost perspective, they just said like, what's the point of creating these artificial barriers for paying $8,000 for a premium domain? That like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So their market play is we're going to offer you services around domains and stuff and give you the domains at cost. So it's a way to breed some goodwill. Certainly bred goodwill for me. But the real reason that I'm using Cloudflare is I need my domain to be there so I can use a certain kind of DNS configuration. And the reason for that specifically is that I'm going to deploy this stuff on Heroku, but I want to use, I think it's often called like the naked domain. So that's like django-allauth.com. It would be the example of the naked domain or the root domain. And versus www.django-allauth.com, which would be a subdomain. With some hosting providers, like the one I'm using for the homeschool app, if you go look at the homeschool app, you'll see it's www. There's not the ability to connect that naked domain to another hosting provider that uses a CNAME. And that was kind of confusing unless you know what that is. So on Heroku, when my app gets deployed, it's going to be some goofy subdomain .herokuapps.com is where it would live. And that we need to be able to point my domain name, journeyinbox.com, to that subdomain. And on most DNS record types, they won't let you point directly to that Journey Inbox. It's like an A record or something like that. And to be really clear, like I'm only kind of so-so on my DNS knowledge. I'm competent enough to get around, but there are things that I've learned in the years, but I'm certainly no DNS expert. But I know that many of those DNS providers will not actually do the ability to connect a subdomain like mysillything.herokuapps.com to that top-level domain, and instead require you to use a certain kind of record to connect it to a subdomain instead. So you're limited to that. And I didn't want to deal with that this time. So I looked up the providers, the kinds of DNS providers that do let you connect naked domain to a subdomain. And Cloudflare is one of them. And also Cloudflare just has a really solid reputation. So I'm going to use them for that in order to connect the domain properly, so I don't have to deal with any kind of www subdomain. And there's not any particular reason to do it that way except to have something a little bit shorter. Some people out there will argue that it's actually not the greatest to do that kind of thing. Don't care. I think there's a lot of websites out there that do that and are quite successful, so I don't think there's a real downside to doing it that way. So that's to build a bit of configuration context. And again, when I run into these configuration scenarios where I can't really show you this stuff, and the reason I can't show you the Cloudflare stuff is it's got like my home address, which you can actually find if you know where to look on the internet, but and like my email, personal email address, and things that just don't need to be immortalized on the stream if I can avoid it. Okay, let's get back to the social app stuff. So we've got our site here. It's currently configured for example.com. I don't think that matters. It'll show up in some emails that we're like going to test locally. We've got email address stuff here that we'll be storing in a moment. I think what we need to do next is look at configuration. So we've run that migrate command. We're ready to go. Now this is the part that's probably going to be a little dull. And I apologize, I have no way to get around this, except I need to have confidence that I've looked through the settings and make sure that they're right for this site. And this is just the reality of configuring stuff sometimes, is you got to slog through these settings and make sure they're appropriate for what we need. So let's do it. There's hopefully a bunch of these will not apply, like maybe once we get to the social account section, none of that will matter. But there's still probably like 20 or 30 settings that we have to go through. We'll go through them one by one, and we'll add, I wonder if you should, okay. So I looked at the way I did this with homeschool, and it just shows like settings that I actually set. And I'm kind of wondering if maybe I should like go through each one. If I'm using the default, I should list it as using the default. Is that going to be useful? Because I say that there are other ways to see the defaults. Let's talk about it. There's no secrets in here on the site yet. So I don't think I'll be sharing anything sensitive by doing this. At some point in the future, I probably won't be able to do this. But if we look at manage.py and look at the commands here, there are commands related to settings. Where are they? There's diff settings. I think, is that the only one? Yeah, it might just be diff settings. There might just be a bunch of options to it. So if we run diff settings, oh goodness, you can see, not very well here, but you can see here are settings that are marked and are different from the defaults. I believe that's the way to interpret this. So I don't remember. They give you reasons for like, why is it triple hash after this stuff? I don't really, we're digging into all that, so I'm sure we can go look at the docs for this. But let's just look at diff settings and do the H option, see what's there. The challenge, I think, is that all of these account settings are not showing up here. So even if we get this, we might need to do this anyway. Let's do manage diff settings. And we want to do output unified, I think is one thing we want to do. So this gives us like colorized versions of this, so we can kind of see what's different. So the default is an empty list. Instead, we're using the star. The default is just the model backend. Instead, we're using 2. So this is where it gets useful. What I was hoping to see, though, is any extra settings that are like present. But what's not happening is the all-auth settings are not coming into play yet. So what's probably happening within all-auth is that it is going to do like a runtime check and look and see if you have these settings and then use them if they're available. So maybe what I was thinking of is actually appropriate to do. And what that plan is to like go through here and come down to the bottom. Now we're going to have our section for Django-allauth, and we'll start putting settings here. And I'm going to go through these one at a time. And if I don't use it, I'm just going to say, hey, leaving it at the default, because I know there's going to be a future state where I'm like, did I need this one or not? And it'd be nice to just be able to run through this list and be like, oh, I set to default, telling me that I thought about it and considered that I didn't need to change it. So we'll start with account adapter. Specifies the adapter class to use. Well, I don't even know what that is. So we'll just say, how should we mark this? Account adapter. Arrow default? I don't know. I'm making this up as I go, y'all. Account authenticated login redirects. Default behavior is to redirect authenticated users to login redirect URL when they try accessing login or sign up pages. Okay? By changing the setting to false, logged in users will not be redirected when they... Okay. So this, I want this behavior. So we'll leave that because it's true all by default. So leave it. Because there's really like no reason to go back to the login or sign up page if you're already logged in. I don't want you to like log in again. That's not going to be helpful. Or sign up again. That's not going to be helpful. We'll say default. Now I'm wondering if I should provide my rationale for why. Because if I'm trying to think about, I know myself at this point, and I know that I'm a person who likes the why. That just seems like so much work to document the why of all of these things. All right, I'm gonna take it on faith for this stuff, for some of these things. Account authentication method. Now I know this is one we're gonna have to change. Login redirect URL has to be set in settings, though. Yep. Yeah. Good call, John. I think I'll make sure to get to that. I'm guessing it's mentioned later on in some of these things. Login. I at least saw one of something that looked along those lines. Login redirect URL. Yeah. Okay. So the account authentication method. I'm pretty sure that we're gonna have to change this. Specifies the login method to use, whether the user logs in by entering username, email, address, one or both. So I definitely want this to be the email version. We'll say this is equal to email. Oh, I'm realizing that's kind of hard to see there because my video's in the way. Let's move it over. And move it up. I'll clean out the extra spaces. So hopefully that's clearer now. Okay, account confirm email on get determines whether or not an email address is automatically confirmed by a get request. Get is not designed to modify the server state, though it is commonly used for email confirmation. I agree. Like I don't want to have to like do a post instead of an email. Oh gosh, yeah, look at this. To avoid requiring user interaction, consider using post via JavaScript in your email confirmation template as an alternate to setting this to true. What a mess. No thanks. I think these, I'm really not concerned with having like a mass deluge of folks that are clicking confirmation emails and doing it via gets. Like I'm just not concerned about that at this stage. We'll leave that as true. Switch from the default. The account email confirmation anonymous redirect URL. The URL to redirect to after a successful email confirmation in case no user is logged in. Oh, wow. I think we'll leave that as the default. That sounds right. Like if you clicked on something but you're not logged in automatically, then yeah, I think you should go to the login page. Seems reasonable to me. Although I haven't defined the login URL yet, so maybe that's a call out to... Yeah, we got to define that. So let's put a to-do here for later. To-do. Set login URL. If it doesn't get set to something that's reasonable. All right. The account email confirmation authenticated redirect URL. The URL to redirect to after a successful email confirmation in case of an authenticated user. Set to none to use login redirect URL. That's where we want to go. So I think on my other app, I set this to like start because I had a special like sequence flow that was kind of an onboarding session, which I don't know that I'll do on this app because I just kind of want to drop you onto a single page that gives you like there's just not a lot of stuff you have to set up on this particular app compared to the other one. So I think none is good enough. We'll say, again, default. But at this point, we also want to make sure the login redirect URL also has a value. So to do, set login redirect URL. And these may have good values, default values from Django, but we need to confirm that. Account email confirmation expire days. That's reasonable. If you're signing up and you don't click on the confirmation in 3 days, yeah, you weren't really serious about signing up. So let's keep that at default. Account email confirmation HMAC. In order to verify an email address in order to verify an email address, a key is mailed identifying the email address to be, what, did I read that wrong? In order to verify an email address, a key is mailed identifying the email address to be verified. Is that like a super clumsy sentence, or am I just being dumb tonight? In previous versions, a record was stored in the database for each ongoing email confirmation, keeping track of these keys. Current versions use HMAC-based keys that do not require server-side state. Oh, maybe it's gonna make the email confirmation URL longer if I use it, but it's like embedded in the email. I get it. All right, so I think that's okay. Yeah, I agree that we don't really want to keep a bunch of server-side state around to manage that when it's easy to keep in the email. Account email required. The user is required to hand over an email address when signing up. Yes, we want that. I kind of like the effect of this too, so that like afterwards it's very clear of which ones I've actually changed, especially since it didn't show up through diff settings. This is a nice way to see this stuff. Okay. Carry on. Account email verification. Yeah, I need to know that your email works, so I'm gonna have to I want to make you verify it. Because I don't want to be sending emails at some service and be like, get bounced back. So mandatory. That requires some template, I'm pretty sure, but yeah. Setting this to mandatory requires email required to be true, which is okay. When the setting to mandatory, the user is blocked from logging in until the email address is verified. Optional or none allows logins with an unverified email address. In case of optional, email verification is still sent, whereas in case of none, no email verification is sent. Okay. Account email subject prefix. Well, definitely don't want to say site. Or I don't want to take the name from the site object. It's just easier to hard code this, because then I don't have to rely on getting the database state right. And as I said, I've already got the name for the product picked out. So we're going to call this journey. Now, do I want to do it like that, smashed together? Or do I want to have it be journey inbox is 2 words? Let me look at both of these in side by side, or vertically. It's not side by side. From a brand, like if I'm thinking of it as a brand or a product, I probably want them smashed together. I don't know. Any opinions out there? I'm going to leave this as a to-do until I make a decision. My wife is in the background. She tells me she has opinion. What is your opinion, dear? Yeah, but just put it in plain. I like it, but in plain text, do you think it's okay to still be together? As long as it doesn't spell a weird word in the middle. Okay. Yinbox. Yeah, that's not a weird word. Okay, I think we're safe. Let's go. Let's make a call. John agrees with you, Elise. Okay, so now we've got the protocol here. The protocol thing is kind of annoying. This is one that I had to do with some configuration in my other app. And the reason for that is, like, in the real mode, when you're sent a real email, we want the protocol to be HTTPS. Like, I want to send secure links, because this ends up getting used in the email that gets generated for a user. So if you're like you're getting that verification email, this is where they decide what protocol to send as your link. My other app uses a .app domain, so HTTPS is actually required for that kind of domain. It's not strictly required for .com, but I'm still planning on using an HTTPS and enforcing it. So I will want to make this configurable, not because I need it to be HTTP most of the time, but I will need it for development. By making this a required email thing, in order for us to test out the signup flow, we're going to be like dumping this verification email to the console and clicking a link there. And if we have the protocol just hard-coded to HTTPS, and I'm only serving on HTTP on localhost, then it just gets annoying. So that's why it needs to be configurable to one state or the other. So I'm going to just, for now, put this as a to-do, set this as a configurable value. Why, Matt? Never mind. Let's just do it now. Let's fix it now. The thing that we want is a setting that's going to be a string. And so that we'll name it like this. And we can leave it as account default HTTP protocol. And it's going to be a string with a default value of HTTPS, because that's what we want. So then we can come down here. We can say this is equal to env of the same value. So that's going to go for the HTTPS for the most part. Let's bring up the example file, and this is account, so that's going to go alphabetically at the top. We'll say account, and this, we want it to be HTTP. when we're doing local dev. And there's still no secrets in this env file, so let's go ahead and plug this in the env file. All right, that saves us a to-do. I don't need to make future work for myself. Okay. Next. Oh, I think saving that file was cleaning up that white space. I was wondering how that white space was disappearing so fast. Account email confirmation cooldown. What is this thing? Users can request email confirmation mails via the email management view and implicitly when logging in with an unverified account. Okay. In order to prevent users from sending too many of these emails, a rate limit is in place that allows for one confirmation mail to be sent per a specified cooldown period in seconds. There's a 3-minute cooldown. Yeah, I guess that's fine to have the default. Yeah, John, you're right. I definitely do not want to be setting up a SSL certificate for local development. You can. There's actually decent tools to make that happen. I'm trying to think of. I've used a couple at work, but I'm drawing a blank on what they are. That basically will do the work of creating a local dev cert and installing it in your operating system's local chain in a way that's very transparent, so that it kind of really makes an optimal setup that you have a nice certificate. But I don't want to go through that rigmarole for that. There's also, what is the name of that very popular Go web server that's got, it's got Let's Encrypt built into it. Not Hugo. What's that thing called? Golang web server. Now they have their built-in one, which I knew this was going to be the results. Boo. Why is it not even? Really? It's like a super popular server too. How about this? Web server built with Go. That's probably not going to get much better. Anyway, it's a really powerful server. I've used it in the past, kind of poked around with it. It has a lot of you can use a JSON API to configure it. It's really powerful. But it's just, I'll think of it later. It'll jump into my head and then I can shout it out. It's pretty cool. Okay. Account email max length, the maximum length of the email field. You won't need to alter this unless using MySQL with the InnoDB storage. Wow, that is very specific. With the InnoDB storage engine and the UTF-8 MB4 charset, and only in. Can you imagine the bug that would have been that somebody wrote in order to necessitate this configuration? That's insane. So you're going to use MySQL, InnoDB, UTF-8 MB4, but lower than version 5.7.7. That's just nuts. This doesn't apply to me, thankfully. So we'll say default. Account max email addresses. The maximum amount of email addresses a user can associate to his account. It is safe to change this setting for an already running project. It will not negatively affect users that already exceed the max. Well, I'm not really giving them an ability to change this, so I don't care. And if I did care in the future, because we do something around having a different primary, then sure. But it's really not a feature that we have to cover. Account forms. We will end up using these. Yeah, we might want a fallback email account. So I definitely might use it in the future. I just don't think that folks, I'm really not terribly concerned about somebody creating like dozens and dozens of email accounts in the system. And I can't see that being a problem. I don't know. I guess you survive long enough and the project is successful enough that may be a problem, but I'm not worried about it today. And they did say it was safe to add one in after the fact. So we could have some problem case in the future, but it's not a problem for now. So account forms, we're going to take the default for now. I don't think we need to modify any of those. We might use, well, not might, we'll definitely use the template that will use that data, but I don't think we need to change anything that's in the data that's done by the form itself. Account login attempts limit. Number of failed login attempts. When this number is exceeded, the user is prohibited from logging in for the specified account login attempts timeout. Set to none to disable this functionality. Important, while this protects the all-auth login views, it does not protect Django's admin login from being brute forced. All right, this seems like a safe, reasonable thing to have. I don't know the behavior. Like visually, what's the behavior going to be if they do hit the limit? Do I have to tell them about the behavior? Is that going to be in site message? Maybe? No. So we can follow that up with the totally fine to have the default here too. Just so used to saving that it's going to clear up that space all the time. Account login on email confirmation. The default behavior is not log in users and to redirect them to that. By changing the setting to true, users will automatically be logged in once they confirm their email address. Note, however, that this only works when confirming the email address immediately after signing up, assuming users didn't close their browser or use some sort of private browsing mode. Well, that sounds like something I want. Like, I hate it when sites are like, you need to go click this verification email, and then once you do it, we're not going to automatically log you in. We're going to make you like, thanks for verifying, but then go ahead and log in again. Like I just did verify by going through that flow. I want to change this one. I'm going to change it to true. All right, there's that. Account logout on get determines whether or not the user is automatically logged out by a GET request. GET is not designed to modify the server state, and in this case, it can be dangerous. See the logout view in the documentation. No, this is when I want to keep the default. I don't want this behavior. I have no problem. Like if you're logging out on the website, then I can definitely wrap that up in a little form post to do that logout. That's a completely reasonable and sane thing to do. So I'm going to use the default in this case and make myself do that, not with just a GET request. And I even experienced this at some point. I think it used to not be this way, and there was an update to django-allauth that made this so that my logout button stopped working, or it would give some kind of warning, and I had to change it. So that's a good one. Account logout on password change determines whether or not the user is automatically logged out after changing or setting their password. I don't think we need to do that, so I'll leave it as default, which is false. Account log in on password reset. By changing the setting to true, users will automatically be logged in once they have reset their password. By default, they are redirected to the password reset done page. How do I feel about this? If you reset your password, should you be asked to log in again? By default, they are redirected to the password reset done page. mean, it's going to be a while before we even have password functionality, so I think I'll leave it as the default, where it's going to go to this done page, and then they can click a login page. If I don't like that behavior later, then I can change it. How many more of these do we have to go? Wow, a bunch. Account logout redirect URL is equal to settings logout redirect URL or slash. I think either of those is okay. If I set it to logout redirect URL, that's fine. If it goes to slash, that's fine too. Because if you're logged out, I want this site to be pretty simple when in terms of its user interface. It's like you log in, your main experience is on the slash. You're logged out, the main experience is on the slash, and then not have a lot of pages beyond that. Maybe I'll change my mind later, but for now, that's where my head is at. We'll leave it as the default. Account password render input render value. Render value parameter is passed to input render value. I don't know what that means. The render value parameter is passed to password input fields. Well, since I don't even understand that one, let's leave it as default. It's probably safe. If you don't understand something, well, is that bad advice? That's probably bad advice. Sometimes you should take the time to understand something. In this case, it sounds very specific to a certain problem and does not sound like security sensitive. So I was going to say, the cases where you might need to learn and try to understand something is if something sounds like it's a security thing. Although I say that and this is talking about passwords. So maybe you might read this as a password thing. I'm not. I think it's like I think it might be like a sensitivity thing. I don't know. Account preserve username casing. This setting determines whether the username is stored in lowercase, false, or whether its casing is to be preserved, true. Note that when casing is preserved, potentially expensive iExact lookups are performed when filter on username. For now, the default is to set to true to maintain backwards compatibility. So they're telling you, or they're telling me, that you should set it to false, because that's kind of what they're implying. Is like, and that makes sense. That's what I would do anyway. It sort of normalizes it, so somebody can only, because you can also think of weird cases where somebody might they might use a capital O instead of a lowercase o, and it might be hard to tell, or there's got to be letters that look very similar between the lowercase and capital version, and yeah, you wouldn't want people kind of spoofing that. Like, I don't have to deal with that. John, seeing your comment here, seems to me that when they are using the field as a password input field, which uses the star to mask the field. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, something along the same lines. So it seemed pretty safe to leave it alone. Account prevent enumeration controls whether or not information is revealed about whether or not a user account exists. For example, by entering random email addresses in the password reset form, you can test whether or not those email addresses are associated with an account. Enabling the setting prevents that, and an email is always sent regardless of whether or not the account exists. Note that there is a slight usability tax to pay because there is no immediate feedback. Okay, well, I'm going to make some crazy assumption that this will be wildly successful, and I will need people to not be like trying to harvest email accounts. So I'm going to say that we are going to use this. So set this to use the default. All right, rate limits. In order to be secure out of the box, various rate limits are in place. The rate limit mechanism is backed by a Django cache. Hence, rate limiting will not work properly if you're using the dummy cache. So this is not going to work properly initially because I don't plan on using a cache right away, but that's okay. When rate limits are hit, 429 HTML template is rendered. So we're going to leave this I'm not going to turn this off, but it's just not going to be beneficial right now. Account session remember. Controls the lifetime of the session. Set to none to ask the user, remember me. False to not remember. And true to always remember. I don't like those remember me settings. And this is my app, so I'm going to say true. So actually I do want to, sorry, I need to set that as a value. I like the convenience. It's this like trade-off between being secure and paranoid versus being a usable experience. I tend to fall more towards the usability side. Maybe I just haven't been hit hard enough by cases where that would bite me. But I'm gonna lean into it seems okay. Yeah, basically set up the cookie. Yeah, you're right. It is a cookie thing. Account sign up email, enter twice. I hate that. When signing up, let the user type in their email twice to avoid typos. Nope. I'm going to assume you're an intelligent human being and know how to either you have a tool that will help you type in your password because it's been your history, or you know how to type in your or your email address because you've typed it in a million times. So I'm not going to turn that on. I'll leave it a false. The account sign up form class. A string pointing to a custom form that is used during sign up to ask the user for additional information. Nope, nope, nope. I want the very, very basics. Just give me an email address and a password. So no, default. Account sign up, enter password twice. No, I am assuming you're an intelligent person. Or better, you're using a password manager and you wouldn't be able to type it in twice anyway. I'm getting a little preachy, sorry. Account sign up redirect URL. The URL or URL name to redirect to directly after signing up. Note that users are only redirected to this URL if the sign up went through uninterruptedly, for example, without any side steps due to email verification. So this shouldn't even matter. If your project requires the user to always pass through certain onboarding views after sign up, you'll have to keep track of state indicating whether or not this user successfully onboarded and handled accordingly. Well, what a mouthful. I'm going to leave this as default. Like I said, I don't think it matters. So default. Account template extension. Really? Why would they have anything else? The string defining the template extension to use. Oh, weird. Default. Account username blacklist. Oh, interesting. I'm going to assume that if you have an email addresses are notoriously hard to validate anyway, so I would not need a blacklist or a deny list, whatever you want to call it. Account unique email enforces uniqueness. This is critical. Yeah, we can't have multiple people here. It's just fundamentally not going to work. So that's true. Has to be true. We're getting there. Count user display name, a callable returning user.username. a callable or string of the form, something module callable name that takes a user as its only argument and returns the display name of the user. The default is user.username. I think I did something like email for my other one. Settings, user.email. Now I don't know if this is actually populated properly. I suspect it is, but let's use this. Count user display. So we're providing a Lambda function so it's taking the user as they said, and then it's going to return the user email. Account user model email field. The name of the field containing the email, if any. That can be the default. The username field can be the default because we're going to use the default model. Username min length. Well, one isn't going to make any sense because, well, that's not true. If you had your custom domain, so I have mattlehman.com. Maybe I would have an email as m@mattlehman.com. In that scenario, m would be the username. I think Django would likely fail this because I think Django usernames are required to be unique. So it's possible, that's going to be interesting. If two people, there's got to be some code in here that django-allauth is using to make usernames that would be unique, because totally there could be people that have some first portion of their domain name that is equivalent, but then that later portion is not. Like there could be a Matt at Yahoo and a Matt at Gmail and a Matt at wherever, and we don't want those all to resolve to the same username. So I'm going to believe that django-allauth is handling that, or I'm going to take it on faith that they are. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what we can do for now. And I say that because I think I've seen it, but I don't quite remember. All right, account username required. The user is required to enter a username when signing up. Note that the user will be asked to do so even if account authentication method is set to email. Set to false when you do not wish to prompt the user to enter a username. This needs to be set to false. Account username validators. A path to a list of custom username validators. Again, email is notoriously hard to validate, so I don't even want to try. So we've got that, and we'll say default. And then we get to the social adapter stuff. So I think we hit the bottom. And I'm gonna put a comment in here that is gonna say, so let's copy this one. And we'll say star of default. Oh, I should check out advanced usage. Oh, thanks for the tip, John. I'll check it out. So we won't pay any attention to those. Let's go to the advanced usage page per John's recommendation here. See what we can learn. HTTPS, yep, that's that thing. And I think I probably read through this a million years ago, but it's been a long time. We have custom user models, so we don't need to mess with any of those. Creating and populating user instances. Following adapter methods can be used. Intervene in how user instances are created. So you can create an adapter and then plug it in somewhere. I don't know how you do that. Because they don't really give an example of how you could customize that. Invitation handling is not supported and most likely will not be anytime soon. An invitation app could cover anything ranging from inviting invitations of new users to invitations of existing users to participate in restricted parts of the site. Oh, no, I don't want to do anything like that either. Here's the section on how we need to set up emails. We'll have to do that later. So we have to configure our emails. So actually, let's record this. In fact, we're not going to get to all of this tonight, so this project is not going to be done. So let's put in some notes about what's next. So let's actually change this to be, these are just some like notes that I needed to say that's what we had to work on. So we wanted to set up user auth with accounts, app. We set up testing. We need to do email templates. That's what that section is. We did the install of django-allauth. We did the setup for email and password, so I feel comfortable with that, about that. And then we did not do this, email templates. What else do we need to do? Let's make sure we cover our bases here. Those are the email templates. We're going to need view templates as well. We'll come back to, we'll visit some of these other sections too before we end the evening. That'll kind of set up where we need to go next stream. We've got this custom redirects. We have messages, but that's already set up. We've got the, are the redirects settings? Oh, we could, yeah, so you could use an adapter and then you could put in different redirect settings. Yeah, I see what you see there, John. The admin, I don't think that we'd have to do anything on the admin. And we don't need to be customizing providers or changing provider scopes. That's cool. Let's check out frequently asked questions. Why don't you support blah? Information is nice, but I need more. Security issues, now what? Accounts give me 404. Yep, not surprising. Accounts profile, because we need to set login redirect URL. Okay. Let's mark down that we need to fix those to-dos. So, fix to-dos related to auth, related to all auth. Left a couple in there. I'll just say related to auth. And then connectivity error. This will be a good chance to, we need to set up, a local memory. There's like a console email backend. That will be necessary for our local dev setup. It also should be necessary, well, actually, we might want to use a memory one for testing. Because we should test out some of these things, perhaps. But this is going to be the way that we'll actually do signup. Since I've made verification required, our signup flow, once we actually get there, is going to be you provide your email address and your password, and we will send a verification email. The verification email, you click the link, and you get logged in. That should be the flow. I didn't write an issue, so I don't have anything to say on this. Okay, let's rewind. And we looked at configuration. I think we don't need to look at any of this provider stuff. We're not doing any of this. Again, if you're doing Google or Facebook auth, there's like a bunch of cool stuff here that could help you connect to that, but none of this matters to me. There are signals that we could pay attention to that we actually might want to pay attention to. I don't remember if I did. Ooh, that's a good question. let's look at the homeschool app briefly. There might be a couple signals that are worth it paying attention to. Let's see if we can find signals over here. I have one. Okay, user signed up. What did I do in that one? Just out of curiosity. User signed up. Oh, I did this like custom notification thing. All right, I don't think that's not gonna be necessary for now. I might want some like detailed stuff kind of giving me awareness of how many signups there are, but that's like way down the road. So there's some signals. That's good to remember that there are things. And if you're not familiar with signals, signals are a feature in Django that can like a function. You can register a function that gets called anytime a signal is fired. So there are points within the life cycle of django-allauth that are kind of act as hooks that allow you to get in there and take some kind of action whenever any of these things happen. Now, importantly to know, if you are thinking, ooh, signals sound awesome, because they kind of are, but the downside with signals is that they are synchronous. So they get called, your function gets called right at that moment. So if you think you're going to do like some big long process to set something up, or send emails or generate documents, I don't know what you might do in there. Just be careful with signals because they can be expensive in some way. But it's good to know that those are available to us. We should check them out for sure later. We've got views that go along with these things. We'll have to pay attention. So when we are setting up our homepage and we're creating like our login buttons and our sign up buttons and our logout buttons and links, that we want to be using these and not the links that come with Django's auth, because we're going to be using part of what django-allauth provides is all of the login, logout, password reset, all of those pages that you would typically care about. They are all provided by django-allauth, which is part of why it's such a cool package. We will ultimately need to create templates for all of these things, but I don't think that we'll actually need to do customize many of these views. Maybe someday we will, but it's important to know what's the name of the view that we can route to, especially login, sign up, and log out. And then these other ones about password management, reset, verification, those things can be kind of later. And then the forms, I think, are the things that power those views that we just talked about. Each one has an underlying form that is going to be used on that stuff. And they talk about how you can customize that, which again, I don't think we will need to do. So what we will need to do is this stuff, is the templates. I think it says right in there, actually it says, interestingly, ships with some templates, but all of these templates are going to be unstyled. So we could like go to this place and click a template or click one of these views, and it might have a default what it's going to render, but I think we need to customize that. So let's go back to our form here and then, or our issue, and then say add templates for, we at the very least need login and log out. Sign up might be a weird one because I think I want to put sign up on the home page. I think it's going to be like the journey. Journey that I'm thinking of having for the homepage is like, here's a journal. Here's the reasons why you might want to do this. Here's like the marketing page all right there. And just at the bottom, here's your place to do the sign up and not have a separate sign up page. We may want a sign up page in the future if we're like directing people there directly. I don't know. Yep, we will need password change or forgot password stuff. Actually, they might have different philosophies on, have you ever, so there are some places that don't bother with password change anymore. It's more like the only way to do that is to click a forgot password thing, and then it sends you the email, and then, well, I guess you still end up at a place where you change the password. So yeah, you're right, John. There's going to be other templates. I'm wondering, like, what can we do that is the minimum to get by if we're like serious about, can we generate an MVP to get something going and then like fill in, I imagine if I've got this live and I've got a customer and they forgot their password, well, it's going to be a very early feature request that's going to happen, and then be like, oh, can you reset my password, or I can't get how to help me out, Matt, I'm stuck. So that will definitely be necessary, but I don't know if it's necessary right away. So, and now that I think about it, we don't need a logout template. That's dumb. That's just going to be a post that will like put you somewhere. So we might need a log out done. Is that what a thing? Template. Where's the list of them? Oh, we gotta look at the directory. So there's log out. All right, so there's some stuff in here. And I remember some of these being a little weird because some of these I think are related to emails, or these just the emails. These are text emails. They might, but these might be emails too. I don't remember. I'll poke at it. Having a little thing that tells us to do this is what we need for now. So I'll just say add templates for login at the very least. And then if we're missing that, we can come back to it later. Okay, so where does that leave us? We have gone through, and I think at this point, I've clicked through all of the documentation with django-allauth. Let's go back to it. Oh, not quite. Decorators, there's one more. Don't need that decorator because we're going to do some other stuff for protecting, doing authorization stuff. So we've done all the configuration for allauth, and there's more to do. There's the things I just said, and that will get us into a position. So once we're done with that, we will be at a spot where we can have a user sign up and in theory go through our email stuff, and we need to configure email. So email is not configured yet. So there's actually a good thing there. We need to, let's see, do we have an issue for that? We've got auth, templates, entries, sending email. Oh, that's for specifically for the app. Oh, you know what we're missing? Oh my word. Maybe that was going to get wrapped up in number 4, but wow. The whole thing's about sending email, and we don't have SendGrid configuration. Hilarious. So we'll need to use a tool called AnyMail for that when we get there. But that's an important aspect of this. But we still have a bunch of work to do to get there. Template configuration is probably going to get knocked out when we finish more of this auth setup to set up these extra templates that we need. That will be a pretty easy one to do. And then we'll get into some more detailed modeling about the actual app. And we've got other things that were on our README that we should revisit as well. So I'm going to take out these things from this list and go ahead and record them as items to do on this list. I want one list to work from, not 2. So let's go ahead and record them real quick and then wrap up from there. Hopefully, if you enjoyed this process this evening, you know, some part of this, as I know, is not very glamorous work. Like I said, by showing you every step of building a SaaS, you see every step of building a SaaS, even the boring parts. And there's a bunch of boring parts, and I don't make any apologies for that. I want to have something complete that there are many times where I get asked, do you have like a playlist of how to build an app? And I don't. And so what I'm going to do with these going forward is you'll see these thumbnails of these videos posted later. And now that I have a name for the product, I'm going to add Journey Inbox as some part of the label. And so if we ever go back and work on School Disk again, because we will someday, just not for many, many months probably, I'll start labeling these a lot more clearly so that you'll know. I'm not going to make separate playlists necessarily, although maybe I will. Maybe I'll add have multiple playlists, but there'll be a complete like chronology of this one. And since I'm committing to you on the stream that I'm not doing any code on this outside of this stream, you will see everything that it goes into producing a SaaS, aside from the small amount of configuration that I can't show you, but I will try and describe that. So that's kind of my promise to you with the stream. Hopefully that's appealing. And if it's not, well, you don't you can skip through. I will try my best to put like a table of contents on the videos that go up on YouTube. So if you need to jump around to see different parts, you'll get some of that as well. So let's finish this off. We need continuous integration. We've got to set up GitHub. We're going to do GitHub actions. To do that, so that's one thing. We need we don't need testing anymore. Got the testing part done. That was done tonight. So we need to measure test coverage. So that's again, that's measuring like how many lines that I've written are being tested. So that'll be that. The Django modeling, I think, is covered by us doing the journal entries and stuff. We need to do the actual deployment to Heroku. So deploy to Heroku. So that's going to have setting up the runtime. That's the build packs, which would be Node, JS, and Python. We haven't even gotten to the Node stuff yet, but that's kind of minimally what goes there. Let's see, looking through here, we're going to need, we need to have CSS. That's Tailwind. That's where we'll set up all of the front end stuff. Make it pretty. By the way, from like a theme perspective, I don't really have if you keep in mind some theme ideas. I mean, we are already working with the word journey. So I'm kind of leaning towards maybe something with a slightly rustic feel. Probably some kind of green stuff. Yeah, John, maybe a logo. Maybe we can use some. I made my logo for School Desk, and it's not fancy, but we could do that. That's actually an interesting stuff. There's a whole aspect of this that I didn't cover with School Desk, where you didn't see any of like well, that's not entirely true. You didn't see a bunch of the creative stuff, the design stuff, where we're just playing with things and colors and all of that. I'm not a master graphic designer, but I can make a decent looking piece of software. So we'll do logos. That'll be fun. Maybe we'll do, I don't know, are there tools for like DALL-E kind of logos, like DALL-E SVG? And does that exist? Be interesting to see what we could do with AI in there. That'd be kind of a fun project. So those things will get us closer. I'm trying to think of like what gets us to that point where we have everything that's like ready to launch. Do I want a product blog? Probably not. I don't imagine that. Like I imagine this is a kind of product that once it is fairly feature complete, that I can't foresee myself adding a ton of features to it. Again, coming back from like what I said last stream, the reason for that is the primary interface is going to be emails. So if you are interfacing with emails, I don't want to get into some messy email parsing and adding a bunch of stuff there. There's not necessarily a lot of features I can add to the website itself, or I don't expect a lot of users to heavily use the website. Really, it's going to be a tool that kind of runs in the background and works with your inbox. So I can see a point which this will be pretty end stage and have a finality to it. But there's probably some like marketing stuff that we can get into that would be interesting. But this is good enough. I don't, I think over 20 or 25, GitHub starts moving to the second page. So having one page of stuff is probably fine for now. We can work with that, and hopefully I can give you an idea of how long it's good for. Yeah, blog is good for marketing though. I agree. It's just a question of, can I market it in other ways where I use more like social posts, like do Oh, you know what I could do? I could at least do Open Graph, Twitter card, Facebook. Well, I think Facebook might be the Open Graph thing, but metadata. So I want to make sure that the page, the like landing page, looks good when it's shared on Slack or Twitter or any of those things. Like if you share that link, it needs to be something that really pops in somebody's face to not just look like a random link. And that's, in fact, maybe some of you don't know this, but that's how some of these things work, is that when you share some links in Twitter, they just show up as a link. But if you share some other links that are like really rich and stuff, and that's built in because of the meta tags that are added to the HTML. So those would be good to add and make sure we incorporate. All right, but that's probably a good enough list. I think I don't want to drone on here forever. So we have our goal. We'll continue working up through this this list here. I'm hoping we can get set up mostly done next week, and at least have something reasonable, and then move on from there. So with that, I will actually let me clean up and push this up so you can all see this final chunk of work. We're done with this section now. Future source home of journey inbox.com. So now we have a name that I can share more regularly. Okay, then we've got, let's add this all and look at what we've got, and then we'll call it a night. So I've added this new configuration for this protocol. We've cleaned up the README. We have added the configuration in the settings. Go away. I think I scrolled by accident. Get out of here. Set up the backend, set up the sites, set up all of those django-allauth settings, and marked which ones were used as defaults. And then we included the accounts section. We didn't actually test any of that out. So one last thing that we could do, let's fire it up just for a minute. Let's see what the login page looks like if we just go in there directly. Let's go to 5,000 and let's go to accounts, login. And it should just be like a very crude HTML page. Whoops. Accounts. Oops, I said account. Accounts, login. And it's sending me to profile because I am already logged in as Matt, the super user. So let's go back to the admin and log out there. So what's doing is like the thing that one of the to-dos that we've left undone is when you're logged in, remember the setting we said is like don't go to the login page, actually go to the wherever it's going. And the default for the login redirect URL is to this accounts profile page, which we're probably not going to build. So we don't want that. So that's why that was not a surprise of where that landed. Let's try this again. Accounts login. And ooh. Social account is not a registered tag library. It must be one of account. Okay, so maybe we do need that social account one. Good to know. Glad I didn't commit this yet. I wonder if would the tests have worked? I didn't bother running the tests. The tests work because it's not exercising that view yet. So let's go to the installed apps in the settings. Oops, settings. Social account, right? It's a singular social account. So that's probably what we're missing. Yeah, good question, John. I think looking at it, it's like, it seems the template, the base template loads in the social account tags. So even though it's not used, well, it is used. It's used in the space account. So this probably would not be necessary in that future state where I am overriding the login. So maybe that's a good, maybe that's something I should call out here. Needed by default templates. And in fact, maybe if I'm not overriding them all, even though we're not using a social provider. There we go. That's good. Learn something. So we can run this, and now that should go away. Hey, there it goes away. So we can see our configuration settings that we've done. It's like there's only one email, there's only one password. That's great. There's the first password thing. There's a sign up page, email, password. Awesome, awesome. Cool. I'm feeling good about that. So that's all good. And I think that we're ready to, we'll just add that to the stage, ready to commit that stuff. I think that was all the settings, right? We've got our accounts. Yeah, we've got the updates, the requirements. Add django-allauth and provide configuration. And this is for number 1. I'm not saying fixes because we still have more stuff to do. And we'll push that up. So if you want to go and clone this down, you certainly can. This is a public repository. Still haven't fixed the license yet, so this will ultimately be a business source license thing. So if you're wanting to make your own email journaling service and kind of use my code completely, please don't. But I will eventually enforce that through a licensing thing that I would hate to have to come after anybody, but that's just the reality of it. But you can check that out at github.com/mblayman/journal, and this will be where the code will live so that you can reference it to your heart's content. I went pretty long this evening. Looks like about 3 hours or so. Thank you all for sticking in there and enjoying this. But I will catch you next week. So take care.